today what we're going to do is we're going to take that 1622 Kranzle unit and we're going to replace the seals on it. I did get the seals from the Clean Garage, and this is the seal kit. I'll put the link and everything down below. It was easy to get. I got it really quickly, and the seals are located at the 3 pistons just inside of this assembly unit. So what we want to do is there's 4 bolts that hold it in place. But the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the gauge, all right, the pressure gauge, because it's kind of in a way and bulky, and it's a 14 millimeter. So I'm going to take a 14 millimeter socket and I'm going to remove the gauge so that we can get that out of the way. So it wasn't that tight. And then that gives us a chance to kind of inspect it, make sure everything's okay, make sure that there's no glycerin that's coming out. It looks like there's plenty of glycerin in it because you can see at the top, right, that glycerin bubble. That's exactly what you're looking for, okay? So it needs to be filled with glycerin all the way to the very top, and you see like a slight bubble when you have it up high like that, okay? So the other thing I'm gonna do too is while I take things apart, I'm gonna clean them off, make sure it looks clean. I'm gonna put a little bit more Teflon tape on here. Make sure that this port is 100% clean. And I did get some picks from Lowe's, so I can kind of clean off some areas as I go. So I have some all-purpose cleaner, diluted 50 to 50-50 with water. And I take that, and every now and then I'll just kind of clean the parts as I go. And there is a protective piece that goes over this gauge. Some of the units have it, some of them lost them. But what we're going to do is we're going to find one and then replace it, put it back on this unit. Unless you want to see what's going on in terms of pressure, which sometimes I do, because this does tell you how many PSI at this point, right, at the high pressure location. This is the low pressure coming in, and then the high pressure coming out, okay? This is the exit, all right. And in another video, what we're going to do is we're going to replace the check valves on these, okay? So I'm going to order check valves, and I'm going to have these all replaced, inspect them, take them off, look at them, make sure everything is good. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to just replace the seals. All right, so for the removal of the seal, you have a 6 millimeter hex that's here. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this 6 millimeter with an impact wrench to remove it. Now, to install it, I wouldn't suggest using an impact wrench. You could use a like a small socket wrench. Loosen them up. All right, so the lower ones are short, like I said. They kind of look like this, right? And then the top ones, I'll take one out. They look a little longer, okay? And they look like they're in pretty good shape. Always inspect these. Sometimes there's some Loctite on it, but I don't see anything here. And it doesn't really need any Loctite when you put everything back together, because everything is really held back together with just the pressure and then the seals that are on each of the parts. That's the beauty of these things, that they're made with a bunch of O-ring seals. These parts have O-ring seals. This does, you know, the unloader, everything. So you can get to it. It's easily accessible, easily replaceable. All right, so let's get to the seals. Just wobble it back and forth slowly. All right, and then you're going to move this whole thing back. All right. So you'll see. Now, these pieces come out, right? And then hopefully they come out easily. One of them did already, and it's kind of stuck. You can see it's stuck on the unit itself, so we might have to And you have to be careful not to mar these brass pieces, right? Because that's part of the unit. So, but these things are old. I mean, this unit itself, I think, is 11 years old, 11, 12, 13 years old, somewhere around there. So it's amazing how long these things last. And but they are fixable. That's what happens when you don't maintain these units. These seals go bad, right? Right, so some of these seals are stuck on the surface over here. And we're going to put everything back the way it was with the brand new seals. Right. And then this is two pieces, by the way. There's the rubber gasket here, and then this piece right here, right, that lays inside of it with the notches on the pump side or the assembly side, right, the outlet side. There's one down here. And you can see there's a little bit of like dust and debris in here because it hasn't been maintained. And don't forget there's a spacer. Right? Sometimes that spacer gets caught up here. I don't know what these spacers are made out of. I think they look like a hard rubber. Right? So that goes in behind that. And then there's brass fittings and stuff like that behind the pistons that we're going to clean and put a little bit of Vaseline on, right? So Vaseline is kind of used to, you know, keep everything clean and lubricated and keep the parts together. I'll show you as we assemble everything, we're going to use the Vaseline to kind of keep things together so it doesn't fall apart as we go. All right, so we're probably going to have to use a plier to remove this. Let's see if we can get around the O-ring and then kind of twist it off. There we go. Okay, so I didn't have to use that much pressure, but you can see how this assembly came off and it was stuck on the unit. Right, and then all those other pieces are actually supposed to lay in here. So I'm going to put these in order so you can see what's going on. Right. Just like that. And again, don't forget this little spacer here, which will all be a part of this assembly when we put it together, by the way, and we put it back into this unit. Because as you can tell, this brass assembly is actually on here, right? So that typically goes in here, right? And then you could take it out that way. So anyway. And I always use a towel. I don't mar up the assembly as I go. If I need to use a little bit of pressure to remove them or whatever the case is. All right. All right, so the pistons look okay. There's a little bit of dirt and rust and pitting on the front side of it. It should be okay. Now you can kind of see it right here. So I'm not going to do anything with that. Maybe a little bit. It's not a lot. It's not enough to be concerned with. This particular unit had pressure, just a little bit of pressure. So we're going to go ahead and replace the seals, get that going. Now inside this unit, there's a rubber seal, there's a washer, and then a rubber seal underneath that we're going to take out. And we're going to actually use the picks that I got from Lowe's. These are Craftsman. Right, we're going to get in underneath it. And we're going to pry it out. Hopefully you can see it. There we go. All right. So these, I understand, are a bitch to put in because they're a little bit larger. Obviously, they're seals. They're preventing water from getting through and then back into the gearbox. So we're going to be a little careful with that. So it's like this. Right? We're going to clean the inside of these. But for now, let's remove all of these brass assemblies here. And again, I use a towel to be ultra careful. And they're all exactly the same size, so it doesn't matter what side you get them from. I mean, I try to typically like follow the same. There we go. I was a little worried about that one. Because you can see there's a little bit of corrosion on the back side of the brass. And then never, with this, you know, just clean it. Use a little bit of the microfiber towel and then clean off the seat, the surface of the seat. But don't use any sandpaper. Don't use anything like that to clean it off, because you're going to be marring the brass surfaces and they're soft. So, you know, you want to clean off the surface on the outside with maybe a bristle brush or something like that, so it looks a little cleaner, then fine. But on the inside surfaces and all that, definitely not. Right? Just use a microfiber towel, a little bit of grease. That's basically it. All right. Remove the seals, the rubber seal in here. Whew. All right. And again, it's amazing. I'm going to make sure that this is clear of any obstructions and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to use a flashlight to kind of inspect and take a look inside to make sure everything is okay. I mean, there is a little bit of corrosion. I mean, this thing is, it's almost 15 years old. So, yeah, there's going to be corrosion in there. Some staining. The brass is a little stained. But, I mean, the whole purpose is that these pistons move back and forth, creates a vacuum, a seal, and then that creates the pressure, right? And as long as you're getting, I mean, in my eyes, as long as you're getting like between 1200, 1500 PSI, then you're good. I know this is rated for, I believe, 1700. As long as you're in the 1200 to 1500 PSI, for what we do, it's okay, it's fine. But when we're replacing these seals, we should be in pretty good shape. So let's take the microfiber towel. Let's get into these and kind of just make sure that they're clean. I don't know if some of you may have noticed that this has a, we were testing it. There was something wrong with the cord. So we cut it back all the way to an unbroken spot just to double check it and make sure that the unit was working. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically take this. I'm going to replace the cable with a longer cable from another unit that's not working. So that's just temporary, just so that we can bump the unit and get everything going. Clean off the seats, get as much of that dirt and grime out of there. I'm sure there's like a product you can use to kind of clean off these surfaces better. I don't want to take any risks. I don't want to damage it. The unit is working, so it's not like it's not working. We just have to increase the pressure by changing the seals. So, all right, yeah. I mean, it's definitely an older unit, no question about it, but it's amazing that these things last. I'm definitely going to replace the check valves, right? So you got the low pressure check valves in here behind these stops, these two stops, and then also underneath the gauge stop here, right? That's a 22 millimeter. I would remove that one first and then remove all the other ones, right? And it's simple, but I'll do another video to kind of show you how to remove those and replace it. But for now, let's put the seals back in the order that we found it. Okay, so first things first, we have these seals that we need to install on the brass assembly. And I brought some Vaseline with me too, so that we can use that as a lubricant, so we can kind of like place it into position. And then it shows you on this diagram exactly the steps, right? So this is the Y packet and the X packet. So the X packet is the one that goes into the assembly. So we'll pull the X packet out first. And I love how it's so organized. You know, leave it to the Germans to like keep everything so organized and well made. And geez. All right, so we're going to put that on a surface so it doesn't get dirty. And now I know that these are the correct ones, right? And then these are the ones that are going to go in here in this unit. And they're definitely a lot stiffer than the older ones, but they are flexible. Some people take a little bit of a heater gun to kind of like warm them up so you can kind of get in there, but this will be a little bit of a bear to get in. So we're going to try to do that first. Let's take some Vaseline. And don't put a lot, just enough to lubricate it, lubricate the sides so that we can kind of squeak it in. And I think you're going to need a small flathead screwdriver, which we do have. You know, we have this little flathead screwdriver that we can use to kind of place it into position. And you don't want a lot of Vaseline because it's not water soluble, number one. And then when you cake it up too much with oil or grease, then you're going to have problems. You know what? I think I need a larger screwdriver with a larger flathead on the end. And I can give myself a little bit more leverage. So you can see what I did is I seated it like on one side. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the screwdriver, the flathead. I'm not actually going to like kind of maneuver it in around the side. So I'm going to keep my thumb on one side and take the other side and maneuver that side in with the flathead screwdriver. So hopefully you guys can see this. All right, there you go. So it's in. So it's super tight, and the whole reason why it's super tight is because you want to make sure that water doesn't get in from the assembly back out in this direction to the gearbox. And when you see like a white oily mixture in the gearbox, that's because water is getting in this direction and then getting into the gearbox and mixing in with the oil, and it kind of foams up. So you want to make sure that that's like number one, seated tight, and you're good to go. All right. The other piece, I'm going to put a little bit of Vaseline on it, only so that we can keep it seated. Right? Just a little bit. Right? And we're going to place that on the surface. Right? And it's the same thing. It kind of seats. And you want to make sure that everything is flush in here. It looks like it is. Right? And that's how it looks when you're all said and done. Right? That piece on the assembly side. Now we're going to do all three and get them done also. Same exact process. And you're making sure that the flat side is closest to the body of the pressure washer. There is a tool for this, and I believe it's over $100 for this tool, but for the couple times that we need it, I don't know anyone, including the people who sell these Kranzlers, that uses it. I'm sure it's a much easier process, like when you're in a factory and you're building hundreds of these, thousands of these. That tool is going to come in pretty damn handy. But for the couple seals that we need to install, a couple replacements, I don't know. Is it necessary? Maybe if you have some money and you want to spend that money, that's fine. And I'm just making sure that they're seated well and they're not skewed in any way, but it looks like they're seated well and they're fine. So, all right, on to the last one. Don't be intimidated by this. It looks like it's impossible to get this thing in there, but it's not. Start from one side, flex this piece in slowly, and start with the side direction, you know, where you have it in the assembly. Start from that side where your thumb is down in it. Hopefully you can see this. It's tough to get on camera, it really is. And you can kind of feel it, like when it first goes into position, you can feel it drop. And then the rest of the way, all you're doing is just coaxing it in. And then everything is flush. And again, if it's not, make sure it is. Okay. And when you're squeezing everything together, right, everything's going to be really nice and tight. All right. So let me see if I can get a camera shot of this. Right? You can see that? All of them are in. The seals are in, and these spacers are on top. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to work on these brass assembly pieces, right? There's a washer here around the outer rim, and then we're going to install the seal and the flat washer on top of that, right? And that goes in here. And then this whole thing seats inside of this assembly, and then everything goes back onto the unit. So this, all of this, that's the old stuff that's in the assembly right now. That's done, so we'll get that out of the way. I only have that there just as a reminder of the, you know, how everything is built. Always can't be too careful. So now, the next assembly packet is assembly packet Y, right? So we're going to take that assembly packet out. Again, we're going to put that on a nice dry surface so that nothing gets damaged or dirty. Okay. And it's just nice how they give you everything. But, okay. So let's look at this diagram again. So it looks like, it almost looked like there was something in here, but there isn't. This is just a seat. All right, and then the other thing that I noticed too is that there is 2 holes on this assembly piece. Now, I don't know if it matters or not, but I did see one YouTuber say that they mount this in a way in the assembly where it's north-south. So, and supposedly that helps. So north-south, and then you're installing it that way. So north-south, not east-west, okay? I don't know if that matters or not, and I probably should have paid attention when I took it apart, but I just remembered now that we're putting everything back together. Making sure the seat is okay, everything is clean. And I'm going to put a little bit of Vaseline on these pistons too, just so that when we apply everything back, it just kind of glides back into position. Especially at the front, because I see a little bit, I can see how that can hang up a little bit. All right, so first things first, let's take one of these and let's remove the O-ring that's on here. We'll take this pick right here and remove the O-ring. That's an old one. Clean this off, inside and out. And again, I wouldn't use any sandpaper or anything that would mar the surface. I mean, I don't see any major marring on it because you're always going to inspect it. And these are replaceable. You can get replacement pieces. Everything is replaceable on these Kranzle units. That's why they're so expensive, because you can fix them and they last for years. So unlike some of the other units that are built for service lives of like a year, 2 years, 3 years. And if you see their repair videos, it's not quite the same. The new O-ring back into position. I'm going to put a little bit of Vaseline on this too. And again, not a lot, just enough to lubricate it. Start on one side and work our way around. There we go. Easy peasy. Didn't need any tools. I wouldn't use any tools for that anyway, because then you're risking damage. All right, so let's put the seal set back inside the middle. Right, so that's done. And now we're going to put the seal set back in. So the way this is set up is that you have this piece right here, which is a plastic. I don't know if you can see that. Hopefully you can see that. Plastic piece, and it's V'd on one side. That V part goes inside this. Okay. And then the notches are on the valve stem side. Okay. So we're going to put a little bit of Vaseline around this. Then insert it to the center. All right. It's all seated. And then there's a little bit of a lip. You can see a little bit of a lip there. That's for the spacer. So there's another like hard rubber spacer that sits on top. And then this whole entire assembly should be flush, right? This whole thing should be completely flush. So hopefully you can see that. All right, and then what we typically do is we put a little bit of Vaseline on this so it doesn't fall out, right? So it kind of creates a little bit of a suction. So, I mean, I could put a little bit here and place it back. All right, and then that's going to seat inside the assembly, right? So it's got Vaseline around it. It's going to sit in the assembly. Boom, right? And it's just so nice how everything kind of fits in there so snug, right? You're never forcing anything together, but that's how it goes in. Now we're going to do all the other ones. Same process. Remove the old O-ring. And I already have some Vaseline on my fingers, so it's already kind of lubricated. Place it into position. It's seated in the groove. Take the rest of the Vaseline that's on my fingers, kind of wrap around it. Right, and on the back side too. Now I've seen people place these into this first before they put this whole thing together, but for me it doesn't make sense, right? So you got these seals and it's got the groove on the back side. You can see that. So this just kind of sits in here like that, right? So it doesn't make any sense to put that in first. Oops. I would just put Vaseline on the seal, Vaseline on this piece, put the wedged end first into the groove, and then the flat side of this, again, on the back side of this. And then it's seated in a way where you can put the spacer in. And again, we're going to put a little bit of Vaseline on that, put the spacer in, and then you're good to go. Right? And again, holes north, south. All right, 2 done. Third one to go. Now these, you know what? These holes are kind of like meant to be clear. So you need to make sure that those are clear, right? And there's no dirt inside of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take the time. I should have done that with the other ones. And I still can if I wanted to. But basically you could take like a little pin and just kind of go back and forth just to make sure that those are clean. So I'm going to get myself a pin and I'll be right back. All right, so what I did is I found a paper clip, right? Bent it out, and then I can get into these holes just to make sure that they're clear. So it looks like they're okay. I'll check the other ones too. Yeah, so All right, again, north, south. Place it into position. All right, let's just double check. Let's see if we could do this from, so without having to remove everything, you can check to make sure that these holes are clear. I think it would take a lot for those holes to be clogged, but you know what? If your water intake, is dirty, you don't know what your source is, because if you really think about it, the water's coming in through here, and there is a screen. There's a rubber gasket, and we'll replace that too. But there is a screen here, and if that screen's dirty or clogged, it could theoretically push dirt through. And if the screen's broken, you should probably replace this. But this looks like it's in good shape, and it looks like it's clear of any debris. Just put it up near a flashlight or something, and you can kind of rinse it down. But this one looks like it's okay. Now, what we're trying to do is just kind of place this back into position, line it up nicely with all three of the pistons straight, and then just slowly push it back into the unit. All right. And the bolts should drive it all the way home. So it's snug, it's tight because the seals are brand new, everything's brand new. So, now it's just a matter of kind of piecing it all together with the bolts and then trying it out, putting some water pressure through there and seeing what our final results look like. All right, so like I said, the longer ones are up top. All right, we're going to start driving those in by hand. Make sure that we don't cross thread anything. And I'm going to go grab a wrench. So we could do the rest of it without the impact wrench, obviously. What we want to do is just basically just drive it in. All right, so they're all snug. Now we just have to tighten it up. It doesn't have to be that tight. I would say 15, 20 foot-pounds. I'm sure there's a spec for it. If I find it, I'll let you guys know. But again, everything is sealed together. This is just holding the assembly up against the unit. It's not sealing anything. Okay. All assembled, good to go. I mean, this unloader's seen better days, that's for sure. I do have an extra unloader. This one feels kind of rough. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this unloader off and replace it with another one. This looks pretty good. So, and again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to this and I'm going to replace all of these check valves in all 6 locations. But until then, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bump the unit. I'm going to hook up a line to it and just make sure that everything's working properly. So let's do that now. All right, we're going to start her up. Just so you know, this was manufactured in 2015. This is a 2.5 orifice, and it's saying that at 2.5, I'm getting 1700, easily 1700 PSI. And with the unloader, I can kind of ramp it back to like 1500 PSI. Or just change out the nozzle. So the 2.5 brings me to, according to this gauge, 1900 PSI. So I believe these are designed for 3.8 orifices. So let's put the 4.0. So it's definitely a little bit softer. And we're running about 1200 PSI. It's perfect for a car. Success. This thing is acting like a brand new Kranzle. Just perfect. Perfect. Thank you guys, and I'll see you on the next one. If you like what you see, subscribe, like, share it with your friends, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.